Alright, we're here today looking at the Bose OE2 ear pads, and basically we're going to replace these today. So here's the original ear pads. You can see there's a little bit of the leather peeling away there. It's getting a bit ugly over here, it's torn. This happens a lot, especially when you're installing some of the replacement kinds. But eventually all ear pads are going to come apart to some extent, so these ones I do a little change. So the way you're going to take these off, nice and simple, you're going to go to the long side of the earphone and you're going to look for the edge here. Well, this one's actually ripped. We'll switch. You're going to look for the edge right here. You can see this plastic part here. That's what you need to pull off, and you're just going to grab onto that and then just pull it down, peel it away, and it comes off like so. The replacements, key thing about the replacements is that depending on the material they're made out of, they're going to be much stronger when you go to put them on. Now the ones that we're selling here at Accessory House, they use protein leather right here, and that's the key, because if you don't use protein leather, the actual bond between the vinyl / plastic piece here and the actual leather itself right here, you can see that middle crease, that's where they're connected. That will tear straight in half if it isn't bonded properly. And as you can see here, I'm going to pull on it. You can see it's not ripping. Right? Now if you look at artificial protein leather and the same exact vinyl on the back, if I start pulling on this one, you can see the middle is already starting to peel off, and it's separated already. There's no way you'd be able to put this on a set of these headphones, of these OE2s, because it gets to the point where you have half the ear pad onto the actual earphone, and it gets much harder to pull up and over and underneath the crease, and if the bond isn't strong enough, it's just going to rip. So the main difference you can tell here is you have the artificial. The key thing about the artificial is you see that it has deeper grooves on it. You can see it looks quite groovy with the leather, and you can see like the little tiny circles of leather, and the lines are a little bit deeper. And on the protein leather, you can still see those grooves, but they're much more faint. And that's when you know you have the real protein leather, is when you see those the fainter grooves in them. Now when you get ours, they have a plastic rim in them. This plastic rim might be clear, or it might be black like this one. It does the exact same job. The idea is for this plastic rim to maintain the shape of the ear pad while it's in transit to the customer. Now you can keep it in or you can take it out. It will install either way. I tend to keep them in, and it'll be a little bit harder to install them when they are in, but if you follow what I'm doing, it should be okay. First thing we're going to do is look at these vinyl / plastic outside clasp. This is a brand new ear pad, so obviously when you look at the old ones, you can see how there's a little bit of that raised edge here. That's because they've been installed on the headphones for a long period of time, so they've shaped to the headphone. And what we want to do is we want to mimic that. So even though ours are coming a little bit flatter because they're new, we're going to just go around the ear pad and pull back on that a bit, kind of get that edge raised up a bit, because we're going to need to have the edge raised up in order to fit it into the groove on the headphone. This is the groove I'm talking about right here. You can see this thin groove here between the diaphragm of the headphone and the outer casing of the headphone. Basically what we want to do is we want to get that that edge of the ear pad here to sit on or in to this little groove. Let's see. Right now, You only need a little bit of it, and then the rest you can pull in. So I'll show you what it looks like. Right there, you can see that that lip was inside of that rim right there, and that's what we want to do. So we're gonna slide that in, and now you can see it's in there. And based on that, I'm gonna compress one thumb and my forefinger to hold that in place, and I'm gonna go around the rest of it, and I'm gonna keep lifting and wiggling and watching that protein leather and the vinyl lip clasp onto the edge and go into that groove. Now so far I have half of it in, and this is where it's going to start to get harder. You can see that the top half hasn't been put in yet, but the bottom half is into the groove. We've also started from the top, so you start on the side with getting the groove, getting the vinyl into that little groove. That's the easiest point to actually insert it. Once you do that, you're going to go up towards the arm, because we want to go start at this side of the headphone first, because this is going to be the hardest part to actually maneuver your hand around if the arm's in the way. It's easiest when you first start putting the headphone ear pad on. So when it's easiest to do it, that's when you put it on the arm, near the arm area. As we go around and we start installing this ear pad, it's going to progressively get harder and harder to pull up and get that vinyl piece to sit into the groove on the headphone. So we want to have nothing in our way when it gets time to pull harder. So right now this is good. So I'm going to start back here. One thing that can be a little bit annoying is this other arm just keeps flopping around, and there's nothing you can do about that besides positioning your hand so that it goes away, kind of like this. So we're holding this here. I'm going to be pulling on it. Up, pull up. And this is where the ear pads will rip if they're not made properly, because once you start pulling up quite hard on the leather, that's the weakest point of this ear pad is going to be the connecting piece between the vinyl and the leather, and if the welding isn't done properly, it'll rip, like I showed you before. Right, so and there we go. So you can see that vinyl or plastic piece or connector piece is in this groove of the headphone between the diaphragm and the outer casing. And now we're good to go on this side. Now the last part you're going to do here is you're just going to look at the headphone, and you're going to see, you know, does this look like it's been centered? And if it's not, an easy way to sort it out is to just palm it from behind and then push down on the front, and then you can twist it, and it twists it straight. It all moves at one time. If you try and do it like this, just pulling around and around, it'll work, but it actually is quite a bit harder to do it that way, rather than just behind and then compress and then turn. It works really well. Alright, so we'll go on to number 2. Just so you can see a second time, we're going to go around this rim, pulling it back a bit, just to get that lip up. We are going to start at the top by the arm. Sorry, we're going to get the actual ear pad onto the side of this first, from the side part. Let's see, you can see it right. This can be a bit tricky as well, but it will eventually slide in there. And if it doesn't, go back to pulling it out like this. You might need to do that a little bit more. We need that edge. There we go. So I got that one in there. You can see right there, it's slotted in. And that's the part that is going to get pulled in next. So I'm going to hold down with my thumb. We'll go around the top first, because that's the hard part. Don't want to be messing about with that near the end when it gets hard to actually put this stuff in. Pulling and wiggling. Pull up and wiggle. Pull up and wiggle. Now we're at that halfway point again. We'll compress around that halfway. Keep the bottom part in place where it was. And now it's going to be harder to pull. So you might need to actually, when you're going to pull on the leather, is to pull only on the leather. Usually when you pinch onto the actual ear pad itself, you'll sometimes get the foam as well. And pulling on the foam and the leather is going to be much harder than just pulling on the leather. So if you just pinch on the side, you can feel if you get that, just the leather. And that makes it a lot easier to pull up and over. Now, when I say it's strong, you do need to pull quite hard. So we have designed the ear pads to be very strong with this. Whoops. All right. One more little double check here. It's also important to note that if the vinyl on the outside rolls in towards the inside of the ear pad, it won't actually be under. It can look like it's actually attached, but it's not. That's what kind of just happened here. There we go. Last part, we're going to do the double check on how it looks. So there's the OE2s there. This one looks a little bit out of sync or out of alignment, so I'm just going to move that out of the way, compress, and turn that top hand, and that helps to straighten it out for us. And there's your replacement. When we go around, you'll be able to see that's all underneath. That's all underneath the groove, or it's in the groove, and it's hooked around that plastic part properly.